Thanks for joining us for this week in Jacksonville Business Edition. So glad you're here with us. And we've got a couple guests today, and it's a unique focus here. What's the beginning of June mean? Start of some season that we don't really like to pay attention to, but we must pay attention to. It's hurricane season. So with us today, Lauren Braddock, who's Florida Sales Director and Partner for Servpro Team TMC. And I'll let you talk a little bit more about what that region is or that area that you cover. And Brandon Cornellier, the co-founder and COO of NexGen Roofing. So let's talk. When a hurricane comes, we always say, good thing it didn't make a direct impact on Jacksonville. But there's always an impact when those high winds, when the rains, when there's flooding and all of that. So I wanted to get started just talking about this because we're at the beginning of the season and people, it always helps. Even if you've lived in Florida and you've been through storms before, it always helps to go, oh yeah, I need to remember that. I need to be prepared. So Lauren, why don't you start us out? How's your business? How are your teams preparing for what could happen throughout this summer into the end of November?
Thank you, Kent. I'm really glad you mentioned, even if you've been through a storm before, it's always great to be prepared. We saw, I believe, with Hurricane Matthew and Hurricane Irma a few years ago, both impacted the First Coast, but in very different ways, depending on where you lived, depending on a lot of different factors. So it's always great to, review your safety plan with your family, review your evacuation plan if that affects you. Make sure you've, gotten medications and things like that.
So with your business, how are you preparing now? Because people are going to be calling eventually, right?
Yes. So with our business, when we're preparing, we bring in extra equipment, extra team members, we hire additional technicians. We are always trying to get prepared for, even if something doesn't happen in Servpro or in Jacksonville, we could be called into a region nearby to help them recover, similar to the way, our JEA linesmen can go help other areas. We at Servpro do the same thing. So, we've traveled to Wilmington, North Carolina before. We've traveled to, Savannah, Georgia before, places in South Florida. So we have those conversations with our other Servpro partners and our other restoration partners ahead of the storm, find out how many labor teams they can bring, how much equipment we can bring. And because of that, we have a very deep bench. We've never run out of equipment before. I'll say that as I knock on the table.
Maybe some wood, get some wood over here to knock on.
But we'll bring in 53-foot trailers. We'll have hundreds of fans, hundreds of dehumidifiers, air scrubbers, things like that, in preparation for, whatever can happen. Yeah, whatever can happen.
Brandon, tell me about your business and how your teams are preparing for hurricane season here.
Yeah, thank you for asking, Ken. We're a locally owned family roofing company in town. We've been a business in some form for the past 8 years, but every season we learn something new, mainly how to prep on our end, because the thing that we need to focus on when it comes to hurricane season, you mentioned earlier that we usually miss the direct hit. However, we can't bank on that. We need to be prepared as if that's going to happen. Yeah. And our priority is getting to our customers as fast as possible, making that process, which is a very scary process. A lot of people don't deal with that, but maybe once in their life. We try to make sure that it's as easy as possible, and all that comes from the upfront prep work that we do on our side.
I'm curious, just even talking about this, and you mentioned adding to equipment and team. Is it a seasonal sort of employment engagement for certain folks? I'm sure you have full-time staff that's always with you year-round, but you said a deep bench. Are there more people that you're ready to add at a moment's notice?
There are. So we have a great partnership, an investment with Servpro franchises in Boston and Rhode Island that will bring down.
No kidding.
What works well with us is their busy season happens to be in the winter when they get severe, cold weather, and that happens to be a season when we're less busy. So we work in trade and help each other with additional labor teams. We've also used subcontract labor before as well. Having our crews manage the jobs, but also bringing labor from all kinds of places just to make sure we have enough folks to do that work.
Brent, is that the same for you?
Well, we're not partnered with anybody out of state, but typically, when there's rain, there's more of a need. That's when people realize that their roof has failed or there needs to be some sort of repair.
The evidence shows up on the inside of the house.
Yeah, exactly.
It's supposed to be on the outside of the house.
Other than being an organically growing company year over year, that's certainly the time of year that we see a tremendous uptick is as soon as it starts raining. It's actually been a little bit of a delayed season this season, but already with the last 2 to 3 weeks or so of rain, you see a pretty large uptick across the industry.
Yeah.
people don't realize they have a problem until it's raining in their home.
So are either of you Florida natives? Both of
both
you?
are.
No.
Yeah.
Both of you. So I'm a transplant, but moved here in 2010. And so you mentioned Matthew and Irma as hurricanes. That was the introduction for Kent Justice and family to hurricanes. And yeah, educational, because those two storms, completely different damage. I remember being here at the station for our coverage during Irma and spending the night at a hotel on the South Bank. And when I woke up in the morning, we were flooded. Wasn't necessarily what I was expecting, but we hear our meteorologists talking about why that's happening. Help people understand what each of your businesses do. And Brandon, why don't you begin? NexGen Roofing. So tell me the scope of what a roofing company does.
Yeah, so NexGen Roofing, we do everything from small repairs to full roof replacements, both on the residential and the commercial side. So oftentimes when people think roof repairs, they think of, your home, but we deal with a lot of business owners in town as well, doing commercial buildings. Usually on the commercial side, when there's a little bit of a problem, it turns into a pretty big problem really quickly. So that's the general scope. We're a building and roofing contractor.
Give me an example. What do you mean by that? It can turn into a big problem really quickly.
Yeah, so absolutely. A lot of commercial buildings in town, they have a flat roofing system, and those, if there's an issue or maybe there's a clogged drain, those flat roofs turn into swimming pools. And if there's a slight tear or any sort of compromising, it's a lot of water all at once. So we try to get in front of that by, we always do free inspections, things like that, so that business owners can put a report together and understand the actual life time of their roof, and those are the things that are best to do prior to rainy season.
Yeah, so right now in June, before we get to some of the tougher weather throughout the summer, is there something that business owners or homeowners should be doing right now to maybe prevent that kind of tragedy on your roof?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important thing, and Lauren can certainly speak to this as well, is vetting the contractors that are local now. Because when a storm happens, there's going to be a lot of people that aren't from here that are here. And unfortunately with that, there's a lot of times bad actors that come with that. So everything from vetting a contractor, understanding who, you may not need them, but just be familiar with who's around. There are a lot of great contractors. We're not the only ones in town. And have that figured out. And the second thing is just documentation. Whether that's getting someone out there to do a roof inspection to see what level of, if there's any repairs needed, or if your life expectancy is maybe 5 to 10 more years, have that done now so that you have documentation prior to a storm happening, so you have some sort of reference from before and after.
More I want to get into on that, but tell us about Servpro. Tell us what the services are that come with your company.
So Servpro is a national but independently owned and operated cleaning and restoration company. We take care of everything from commercial, residential, fire damage, flood damage, mold, mildew mitigation, biohazard as well, sewage backups. So really, I tell folks when I'm meeting them, basically anything that you don't want to happen to your home and business, we can come in and help you take care of it.
Yeah, and certainly when it comes to storm damage, that's something that I don't need to have my roof knocked off to have that damage. It can be the water coming in that first foot, that first 6 inches. What are some of the things that people can do now to prepare before a storm creates damage?
So going out and doing a complete survey of your property, whether that's around the exterior, checking in your landscaping, making sure that's all trimmed back and cleaned out, cleaning out your gutters, making sure your windows have been caulked recently. As Brandon said, checking your roofing. Making sure you're not raking all your leaves into your storm drain, and those are cleaned out.
So this is what I wanted to get back, and I think both of you could probably speak to this. I think there's a certain level of fear, especially on the homeowner side, and maybe you can speak to it as well, as they're on the commercial side, or they're business owners who say, I don't even want to have that inspection now because maybe somebody's going to try and get me to do something that I don't really need to do yet.
I think Brandon would agree with me here. We've been in business in Jacksonville for 43 years, and so we're a big thing that we stand on is, building those community relationships and helping our community. So, when we come out, you might not need us, but, making that call to see, hey, can you come out, can you take a look? I'm nervous about, this particular issue. Can you take some moisture readings? Can you take a look at my shower or my ventilation system? I'm worried about my humidity levels, worried about my ductwork, things like that. And if they don't need us then, they'll remember that we gave them great customer service, and they may need us 5 years down the road.
Well, I think that worry is, are you going to tell me if I really don't need service right now? I mean, it's just a matter of, you guys, when you're doing business, you say, hey, I want to be transparent and upfront and honest about it. No, you don't need my service right now. Think of me fondly when you do, right?
Exactly.
I mean, and just to echo that, the reputable companies in town, they've built their foundation off of interactions with homeowners and business owners like that. Companies don't last long if everything needs to be replaced, everything is a major problem. That gets out. I mean, that happens one time poorly, and then that'll never happen again. So that just goes back to doing your research on local companies that are going to be here for a long time. They have experience and a good reputation.
Yeah. Since you're both local business owners, operators, what have you, what are some of the skills that you're looking for people that you bring on the team when it comes to what you do?
You want to take that one first?
Yeah, sure. And I think we're probably going to have a lot of the same answers here, but especially when you're looking into bringing on new folks during a storm season. Obviously, there's always going to be a cultural aspect to that, making sure that they're a good fit.
Do they fit? Yeah.
Yeah, and they match up with our pillars of giving back to the community and just team empowerment. But more so than that is they have to have a level of empathy, because they're dealing with people that oftentimes have never been through this situation before. And when you treat that person as a number or just a signed estimate, that's happens far too often with homeowners getting taken advantage of in those vulnerable situations. So we say you have to put yourself in their shoes. We see this every day, they don't, and you have to treat it as such. So just coming with that compassion and empathy is probably the biggest component to bringing on someone to our team, at least at this point of the year. Those
are some of the tools and skills you're looking for as well?
Exactly. We've said for a long time inside our organization that the two biggest things we're looking for are effort and attitude, and you can train the restoration industry, but if someone shows up, is eager to help people, has a great attitude, has empathy, like Brandon said, and the same thing with our industry. If you have a water damage or a flood, a lot of times it is a once in a lifetime event, and for folks who have never been through that before, or they've maybe never had to deal with their insurance company or file a claim, or there's antiques in their home that mean a lot to them that have been damaged, and being able to keep that in the forefront of our minds, that when we're walking through their home, having that empathy on our sleeve and making sure we're giving them as much information as we can to help them through that claims process.
So the focus of our podcast is economic growth and development, and one of the things that we've talked about in this last year and a half we've been doing our podcast is the influence of artificial intelligence. So how is AI coming into what each of you do? Are there tools, are there ways that you're incorporating AI into what you do at NexGen?
Absolutely. Yeah, well, customer efficiency and customer satisfaction is always going to be the end goal. So we've incorporated technology to help us get to that end goal. Everything from instant roof quotes on our website. You don't have to even talk to anybody, but you can go and plug in your address. You can get a range of what, for the person that says, I don't even know what it would cost, what would a roof cost? We have tools to do that. A lot of our onboarding of customers is streamlined so that we're able to get them, proposals, scheduling dates, everything of that nature quicker and more streamlined. It makes our team a lot more effective in what they do and a lot more productive so that we can get to that end goal of providing a good customer experience.
So Brandon Cornellier from NexGen Roofing is with us. Lauren Braddock, tell me about AI in your industry. Is that something you're using at Servpro?
It is something we're using for documentation and scheduling within our organization right now. There's a new technology we started using about a year ago that's made a huge difference in our estimating and sketching for homeowners and commercial business owners. It's called DocuSketch. So it's a 360 camera that goes in and does either pre-loss, we can do it ahead of time if somebody wants us to come out and scan their home or scan their business for the benefit of their insurance company, or if they just want to know what they have and they're nervous. Or at the time of loss, we go in and it's like a Google Street View 360, but of the inside of your home. And that's, been so great for insurance claims, giving that homeowner the peace of mind, but not only that, but it also speeds up the time that our technicians are out in the home doing a sketch, because it will produce the interior map of someone's home. And so that way we can start estimating right away.
Are you getting feedback from folks who are using these tools that you're talking about?
Insurance
Do they like
companies
it?
love it. Insurance adjusters love it, and it's definitely you know, what's great about these tools is we're not replacing anyone on our team. It's just helping them do what they do more quickly, so that we can get to more customers and help more people.
Yeah. What kind of feedback are you getting?
Across the board, great feedback, not only from our customers but from our team. You know, anytime you can offer somebody a tool to make their life easier.
Yeah.
And you know, the training to do so, because there's constantly new information coming out, new tools, what's going to be most effective for our team. That's what we work through on a daily basis.
And part of what I'm hearing you say, and I'm just filtering it through a consumer's viewpoint, obviously, it's not just about making the life easier for your companies. Hey, as a consumer, if that streamlines that process for me, boy, that can take a weight off my shoulders. Because as you're talking about it, so the 15 years that I've been here in Florida, yeah, a couple different times we've had roof damage because of storms. And walking through that process, especially the first time, pretty scary. I went out and covered some of the damage from Hurricane Michael in the Panhandle a few years ago, and connected with a Jacksonville company that was going in like Servpro would to try and help with the water damage and restoring that property. And again, I think as we get tools that make it easier for me as the consumer, in addition to how efficient you all can be, I think that's probably a good thing, right?
Yes.
All right, before we wrap up, what's the big thing that people who are listening or watching the podcast need to know as we get into the meat of the summer and storms start coming through? What's your, I guess, final word to them to prepare and be ready for whatever comes our way?
I think to share just one thing, the most important thing I would impart would be to, whether you're a commercial business owner or a homeowner, to review your insurance policy. I think our insurance in the state of Florida has gotten more expensive over the years, as a lot of people have noticed, and you know, maybe without realizing it, they've made cuts to their coverage, looking for, you know, cheaper pricing.
Trying to save a buck, yeah.
And which I certainly don't blame folks, but you know, that could impact what you're able to build back, or you know, what you're able to replace on your content. So I strongly suggest, you know, calling your agent or contacting the company you have your insurance through, reviewing your policy, you know, coming up with questions like, hey, if X were to happen, would you replace this? And you know, just having that conversation and making sure you're covered for what's important to you.
That's a great suggestion. Brandon, what about you?
Well, outside of that, I would say just documentation as a whole. You know, taking pictures, making sure, especially for an insurance claims process, you know, having those before pictures to prove that this happened at this time during a storm is super important. But outside of that, you know, taking pictures, whether it's of your roof, I wouldn't suggest anybody get up there unless they're a professional, but whether that's getting an inspection or just doing a perimeter walk and getting pictures that way. It's always a good thing to have photo documentation.
Clearly there's a difference based on the size of the property or what have you, but what are some price ranges I should be thinking about if I'm a homeowner or a business owner? What's reasonable to expect for just that inspection or documenting things before a storm happens?
Go ahead.
Oh, well, yeah, well, we've never charged for an inspection. We provide a full photo report. We work with a lot of real estate agencies and insurance carriers to get even letters to state how long we believe as the sophisticated party, how long there is on a roof lifespan. And we do all that because that's what you should do as a business owner in Jacksonville for the local community. And that's paid in dividends, because if we're going out, we're setting ourselves apart as an honest contractor, the competition becomes pretty slim when you do that. So never charge for a free inspection or consultation.
All right, Lauren?
Sorry, will you repeat your question again?
Sure, no, I'm just wondering if there's a certain price point that I should be thinking about if I'm trying to take some advantage of what you're saying. Hey, do some prep work in advance and make sure that you know what's there and how you're going to be protected.
I would say the average residential water loss is between $3,000 and $5,000 now, and that's just our experience from our documentation over the years. I would say...
I need to have an emergency fund. I just heard that.
Yes, yes, that's very important. But you know, if it gets into, you know, needing to replace flooring, you know, needing to replace plumbing or go in and do some plumbing repairs, things like that, those can all add costs. So, you know, again, I'll echo, it's very important to know your deductible what your responsibility is for. Not a lot of folks have that rainy day fund, so just making sure, if you can, put that aside ahead of time. And then also, reviewing that policy, like I said, and I do want to add that once there is a named storm in the Atlantic or in the Gulf, you can no longer make changes to your policy. You can no longer call up your agent and say,
yep. Great reminder.
They
yeah.
lock that down. So, and like Brandon said, we don't charge for estimates either. And then during a storm event, we don't charge for after hours emergency service. So a lot of times, sometimes our response times are extended a little bit during the hurricane. Not much, but they are extended a little bit. And if we can't get to your house at 6 o'clock at night, we don't charge extra for that.
Yeah, thank you, by the way, for any of us who need some of those services there. I appreciate talking through this, and I know that all of us are saying, boy, crossing my fingers or knocking on wood, that we won't have one of those storms that directly hit Jacksonville, but we know that the history says that could happen anytime. So let's make a pact for all the people who are watching or listening here. Hey, why not by the end of June, by June 30th, nail that down. Have either an inspection or your personal inventory, have all of those things done so that you're ready if anything happens. I tell you what, Lauren Braddock from Servpro, thank you so much. And Brandon Cornellier from NexGen Roofing, appreciate some of your insights there. And thank you so much for tuning in, for listening in or watching This Week in Jacksonville Business Edition. Again, wherever you find your podcast, go ahead and like, subscribe, or follow.